I still remember the day my parents chose my sister over me. Not because they said the words out loud. Because they didn't have to. Some moments change your life forever without anyone raising their voice. Mine happened when I was only 8 years old, standing outside my third-grade classroom with a crumpled math test in my shaking hands. That single afternoon would become the beginning of a story I never wanted to live. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 31 years old, and today I run a successful nonprofit that helps children who have been forgotten by the people who were supposed to love them most. But I wasn't always this woman. Years ago, I was simply the little girl everyone compared to her identical twin sister. Her name was Olivia. She was brilliant. I was ordinary. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. If this story resonates with you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Growing up, Olivia and I looked almost identical. Same dark brown hair. Same green eyes. Same freckles across our noses. But according to my parents, that was where the similarities ended. Olivia is gifted, my father would proudly tell neighbors. Then he'd glance toward me and smile politely. And Elena? She's trying. I used to pretend those words didn't hurt. But children remember everything. Every sigh. Every disappointed look. Every comparison. Every silence. By the time we were 10, Olivia had already skipped a grade. She won spelling bees. Math competitions. Science fairs. Teachers loved talking about her future. Meanwhile, I loved painting sunsets. I loved writing little stories in old notebooks. I loved helping classmates when they were sad. None of those things mattered in my house. One evening, I walked into the kitchen carrying a drawing I had spent hours making. It was a picture of our family standing under a giant oak tree. I had even written, "Together forever," across the top. "Mom," I said excitedly, "look what I made." She barely looked up from helping Olivia with algebra. "That's nice, sweetheart." Then she turned back to my sister. "Now, Olivia, let's solve the next equation." I stood there for almost a minute. Waiting. Hoping. Neither of them looked at me again. Quietly, I folded the picture in half. Then in half again. I carried it back to my room without saying a word. That night, I cried into my pillow because I couldn't understand why it felt like being invisible hurt more than being yelled at. Everything changed the summer we turned 12. Dad accepted a job 3 states away. Money was tight. The move was stressful. My parents started talking in whispers after dinner. I wasn't supposed to hear them. But old houses have thin walls. One night, I heard my mother's voice. "We can't keep sacrificing Olivia's future." Dad answered quietly. "I know. What if Elena stayed with your sister for a while? Olivia needs better schools." I froze. Stayed with my aunt? Without them? I told myself I must have misunderstood. Parents don't leave one child behind. Especially not their own daughter. The next morning, Mom smiled while packing a suitcase. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "you're going to stay with Aunt Denise for a little while. Just until everything settles." "How long?" "Oh, not very long." I believed her. Children always believe their parents. I hugged Olivia before they left. She whispered, "I'll miss you." Then they drove away. I watched their car disappear around the corner. I kept waiting for it to come back. It never did. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Phone calls became shorter. Birthdays became forgotten. Then one afternoon, Aunt Denise sat beside me on the porch. She looked like someone carrying terrible news. "Honey." Her voice trembled. "I think it's time you knew the truth." I looked at her. She reached for my hand. "Your parents enrolled Olivia in a private academy." I nodded. I know. They told the school they only had one child living with them. I frowned. What do you mean? Tears filled her eyes. They never intended for this to be temporary. I felt something inside me break. No. They said raising both girls was becoming too expensive. No. They believed Olivia had more potential. I pulled my hand away. No. I kept saying the same word because my heart refused to understand the sentence my ears had just heard. Parents don't abandon children because one gets better grades. Do they? That night I waited beside the landline. Certain Mom would call. She didn't. The next day, neither did Dad. Or the day after. Eventually, I stopped expecting the phone to ring. Life with Aunt Denise wasn't glamorous. She worked double shifts at a local diner. Money was always short. Sometimes dinner was grilled cheese. Sometimes it was canned soup. Sometimes she apologized because there wasn't enough. But every single night, she asked me one question. How was your day? No one had asked me that in years. She came to every school play. Every parent-teacher meeting. Every art show. When I won second place in a county painting contest, she taped the ribbon to our refrigerator like it was an Olympic medal. I always knew you were talented, she smiled. Those words healed something inside me. Slowly. Quietly. One tiny piece at a time. At 15, I accidentally found a cardboard box hidden in Aunt Denise's closet. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for wrapping paper. Inside were dozens of unopened envelopes. Every one of them had my name written across the front. My heart started racing. Dear Elena. It was Mom's handwriting. Another. And another. And another. There were birthday cards. Christmas cards. Letters. None of them had ever reached me. My hand shook so badly I could barely breathe. Had my parents been trying to find me all these years? Had everything been a misunderstanding? Just then, I heard Aunt Denise unlocking the front door. I quickly placed the box back exactly where I found it. That evening, I couldn't concentrate during dinner. Every bite tasted like questions. Finally, I looked at her. Aunt Denise. She smiled. Yes, sweetheart? I found something today. The smile disappeared from her face. What did you find? The letters. She slowly put down her fork. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered words that changed everything I believed about my childhood. They're not what you think they are. If you're enjoying this story, like and subscribe because it truly helps. Because what Aunt Denise revealed next would force me to question every memory I had of my parents. And uncover a family secret that had been hidden from me since the day I was born. Aunt Denise didn't touch her dinner. She folded her hands together and stared at the table as if she had rehearsed this conversation 100 times but had never found the courage to begin. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The letters. She whispered. They're not what you think they are. I swallowed. Then tell me. She closed her eyes for a moment. Your mother wrote every one of those after you came to live with me. Hope rushed through me. So, she did miss me? Aunt Denise looked up, and the sadness in her eyes answered before her words did. No, sweetheart. The hope vanished just as quickly as it had appeared. Then why write them? Because someone told her to. I frowned. What do you mean? She stood, walked to the closet, and brought the cardboard box to the kitchen table. One by one, she placed the envelopes in front of me. Open them. My hands trembled as I unfolded the first letter. It began warmly. Dear Elena. We hope you're doing well. Your sister continues to excel in school. We're sure you're adjusting nicely with Aunt Denise. I blinked. There was no I love you. No apology. No question about how I was feeling. The entire page was a list of Olivia's accomplishments. I opened another. The same. Another. The same. Each letter sounded more like a progress report than a message from parents to their daughter. Then I noticed something strange. Every envelope had been sealed. But none had stamps. None had mailing dates. They never mailed them, I whispered. Aunt Denise nodded. They handed them to me whenever we met. Why? They said if anyone ever questioned where you were, I could prove they had stayed in contact. The room spun. So they weren't letters. No. They were evidence. For years, I had imagined my parents regretting their decision. Instead, they had been protecting themselves. I covered my face with my hands and cried, not because they had abandoned me. I'd already lived with that pain. I cried because I realized they had planned everything. Nothing had been an accident. Nothing had been temporary. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every childhood memory, wondering how many of them had been real. The next morning, Aunt Denise knocked softly on my bedroom door. I called in sick today. You didn't have to. I know. She smiled gently. But today you need someone. She made pancakes, even though we were almost out of flour. She poured 2 glasses of orange juice and sat across from me. There are things I never told you because I promised your parents I wouldn't. I looked at her. I'm old enough now. She nodded. The day they brought you here, your father told me something I'll never forget. I held my breath. He said, Olivia is our investment. Elena will be happier somewhere she isn't constantly compared. Investment. That single word echoed inside my head. Was that all family was to them? A calculation? A return on investment? A child with higher expected rewards? Aunt Denise reached across the table. I argued with them for hours. What did they say? They insisted they were doing what was best for everyone. I laughed bitterly. The best for everyone except me. She squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry. The following Monday, I returned to school. My best friend, Maya, noticed something was wrong before I even sat down. You've been crying. I forced a smile. I'm okay. She folded her arms. You've never been able to lie. So I told her. Everything. When I finished, she sat silently for nearly a minute. Finally, she asked, Do you know what I think? What? I think your parents made the biggest mistake of their lives. I shrugged. They chose Olivia. No. She shook her head. They chose achievements over love. I had never thought about it that way. For the first time, I wondered if my value had never actually depended on my grades. Maybe their priorities had been broken all along. Months passed. I buried myself in school. Not because I wanted to prove my parents wrong. Because I wanted to discover who I was without constantly competing against someone else. I joined the art club. Then the debate team. I volunteered at the community library, reading books to younger children every Saturday morning. One afternoon, a little girl hugged me after story time. You're my favorite reader. I smiled all the way home. For years I had believed intelligence was measured by report cards. But that little girl reminded me there were countless ways to make a difference. Just before my 17th birthday, something unexpected happened. The phone rang. Aunt Denise answered. Her face changed immediately. She looked toward me. It's your mother. Every emotion I'd buried rushed back at once. Fear. Hope. Anger. Confusion. Aunt Denise held out the receiver. You don't have to answer. I stared at it. After 5 years. Why now? Slowly, I took the phone. Hello? For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then I heard my mother's voice. You've gotten so grown up. I didn't know what to say. She sounded older. Tired. Almost unfamiliar. I've been thinking about you. I closed my eyes. 5 years of silence. And that was how she began. Finally, I asked the question that had haunted me since I was 12. Why? Another long silence. Then she whispered, it's complicated. No. My voice shook. It isn't. You left. I know. You chose Olivia. You stopped calling. She started crying. But for the first time in my life, someone else's tears didn't erase my own. I've missed you every day. I looked at the wall, trying to steady my breathing. If that's true, why didn't you come? She hesitated. Then someone in the background spoke. A man's voice. My father's. Tell her. Another silence. Finally Mom whispered, your father thinks it's time you came home. Home. The word felt strange. I wasn't sure where home even was anymore. The house I remembered? Or the little place where Aunt Denise had spent years proving that love wasn't measured by achievements? I'll think about it, I said quietly. Then I hung up. That night, I sat on the front porch watching the sunset. Aunt Denise joined me with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. What are you thinking? I don't know if I want answers. Or peace. She nodded. Sometimes they're not the same thing. Those words stayed with me. Because deep inside, I knew one thing. If I went back, nothing would ever be the same. 2 weeks later, another envelope arrived. This one had a real stamp. A real postmark. Inside was a handwritten letter from my father. It was only 3 sentences long. Olivia needs you. Please come before it's too late. There are things you deserve to know. I read those lines over and over. My father had never asked me for anything before. Why now? Why after all these years? As I turned the envelope over, something small slipped onto the floor. It was an old photograph. A picture of Olivia and me as toddlers. But someone had written a single sentence on the back in faded blue ink. One of these girls was never meant to leave. I stared at those words, my heart racing. Who wrote them? And what did they really mean? Part 3. I couldn't stop staring at the sentence on the back of the photograph. One of these girls was never meant to leave. The handwriting wasn't my father's. It wasn't my mother's either. The ink had faded with time, as if those words had been written years earlier and forgotten, until now. I slipped the photograph back into the envelope and drove to Aunt Denise's house the next morning before work. She was watering flowers on the front porch when she saw my face. What happened? Without saying a word, I handed her the photograph. Her smile disappeared. She adjusted her glasses, read the sentence twice, and slowly sat down. You've seen this before, I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded. I was hoping it would never come back. My pulse quickened. Tell me the truth. She looked toward the quiet street before speaking. That handwriting belongs to your grandmother. My grandmother? Your father's mother. I had met Grandma Evelyn only a handful of times before I was sent away. She had always seemed distant, but never cruel. What did she mean? Aunt Denise sighed. She believed your parents were making a terrible mistake. I frowned. Then why didn't she stop them? She tried. That answer only created more questions. Aunt Denise invited me inside. She disappeared into the hallway and returned carrying an old wooden box I had never seen before. I've kept this for almost 20 years. She opened it carefully. Inside were photographs, birthday cards, newspaper clippings, and a small leather journal. She picked up the journal. This belonged to your grandmother. I looked at her in surprise. She gave it to you? A week before she passed away. My hands trembled as I accepted it. On the first page, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "Some truths are too painful to tell a child. But they should never die with the adults." A chill ran through me. Every page described our family. Some entries were ordinary. Others were heartbreaking. Then I found an entry dated just 2 weeks before my 12th birthday. "Michael and Rebecca believe Olivia deserves every opportunity. They keep calling her the future." I asked them what that makes Elena. Neither answered. I couldn't breathe. I turned another page. "I'm afraid they're preparing to separate the girls." Another. "If they go through with this, they'll regret it for the rest of their lives." Tears blurred the ink. Grandma had known. She had seen everything. That afternoon, I decided to call my father. For years I had imagined this conversation. Now that it was finally happening, I wasn't sure what I wanted from it. He answered on the third ring. "Elena?" His voice sounded older than I remembered. "I received your letter." "I'm glad. I have questions." "I know." "Why now?" There was a pause. Then he quietly replied, "Because keeping the truth hidden isn't protecting anyone anymore." "What truth?" "I'd rather explain it in person." "No." I stood beside my kitchen window, gripping the phone tightly. "I've spent half my life waiting for honest answers." He exhaled slowly. "I understand." "Then start talking." Instead of answering, he asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Do you remember the scholarship interview when you were 11? I frowned. "There wasn't one." "There was." My heart skipped. "You were invited." "No. I never received anything." "I know." Silence. Then he whispered the words that changed everything. "Because your mother hid the letter." I felt my knees weaken. "What?" "You had been selected for a state arts scholarship." I couldn't speak. "You were one of only 12 students chosen." "But you never knew." Years of confusion suddenly collided inside my mind. All those afternoons wondering if I simply wasn't good enough. All those dreams that quietly disappeared. Someone had taken that opportunity away before I even knew it existed. "Why?" I whispered. His voice cracked. "Your mother believed accepting it would distract from Olivia's education." After the call ended, I sat alone for hours. I wasn't angry because I had missed a scholarship. I was angry because someone else had decided my future without asking me. For the first time, I realized something important. I had never failed. I had never even been allowed to try. A week later, I drove back to the town where I had grown up. Every street looked smaller. The elementary school. The grocery store. The old playground. Even the oak tree where Olivia and I used to race each other. Everything had changed. Yet somehow, nothing had. As I stood outside my childhood home, my stomach twisted into knots. The front door opened before I knocked. My mother stood there. For a moment, neither of us moved. She looked older. Gray streaks framed her face. Her shoulders seemed heavier. Then she quietly said my name. "Elena." I answered with a simple nod. She stepped forward as if she wanted to hug me. Instead, she stopped halfway. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I almost didn't." She lowered her eyes. "I understand." Those words would have meant something years ago. Now they simply felt late. Inside the house, almost everything looked familiar. The same staircase. The same fireplace. The same family photographs. Except one thing caught my attention immediately. Every framed picture on the wall showed Olivia. Graduations. Awards. Competitions. There wasn't a single photograph of me. Not one. My mother noticed where I was looking. I've been meaning to fix that. I forced a sad smile. After 19 years? She had no answer. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Someone was coming down. Slowly. Carefully. When she reached the bottom step, I barely recognized her. Olivia. She looked exhausted. The confident, unstoppable girl I remembered was gone. Her smile was small and uncertain. Hi. I nodded. Hi. For several seconds, we simply looked at each other. Then, without warning, tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry. I blinked. For what? For letting them compare us. You were a child. I still should have done something. I shook my head gently. No child should have to carry that responsibility. She covered her face, crying quietly. I thought they were helping me. Her voice broke. I didn't realize they were hurting you. Hearing those words lifted a burden I hadn't realized I was still carrying. For years I had blamed my sister. Standing there, I finally understood. She had been trapped in the same broken system. Just in a different way. That evening, after dinner, my father walked into the living room carrying a large metal lockbox. He placed it on the coffee table. I've avoided opening this for nearly 20 years. He unlocked it. Inside were dozens of files. Legal papers. Medical records. Birth certificates. Old hospital documents. He picked up a thick envelope. There is something your mother and I should have told you when you were old enough to understand. I looked at both of them. Neither could meet my eyes. My father slowly slid one document across the table. It wasn't a school record. It wasn't financial paperwork. It was a hospital report from the day Olivia and I were born. Across the top, stamped in bold letters, were words that made my heart stop. Confidential, maternity record correction. I looked up in confusion. What, correction? My father's hands trembled as he answered. The hospital made a mistake the day you and Olivia were born. And in that moment, I realized my entire identity, and everything I believed about my childhood, was about to change forever.